Well, quite an important moment there, Naledi, with the five heads of state. Of course, as you remember that Vladimir Putin is not part of this conference. Instead, he is joining and participating virtually. But an important moment there. But Russia, of course, being represented by the foreign minister, Sophie Mokoena, is joining us for this conversation, SABC International News Editor. We saw a bit earlier on the leaders of the BRICS bloc taking to the podium for that all-important photo op, family pictures they call it. But there's one person missing.
Yes, indeed, President Vladimir Putin is not there. As you pointed out, you have Sergei Lavrov, the Foreign Affairs Minister. But I think in terms of Russia's position on these issues that we spoke about earlier on, the voice of President Putin will still be very loud. Judging from what transpired yesterday, much as he was virtual, many media houses are running stories around what he said. And I think today his speech is going to be even more harder in terms of issues and direction, to demonstrate that you can stop me from traveling to South Africa, but you can't silence my voice.
Yeah, but what about the optics themselves? And yesterday we were actually having a chat about his posture as well as he was delivering his address to the BRICS Business Forum. What about the optics? When people look at it and say that there's a very crucial player of the BRICS bloc, but he's absent.
For the first
Has he been weakened?
Not at all. For the first time, however, you will have the archives, in the archives of BRICS and this summit, one member missing. And therefore, I think in terms of the photo op, the story of the photo op, it doesn't tell a complete story. But what is critical is what they are going to discuss. And he will still participate, like he did yesterday. And today, many people are talking about what he said.
Yeah. What do you expect to hear from the leaders?
I expect them to really give a direction in terms of the main discussions. The issue of trade and investment, how are you going to ensure that you are able to deal with the trade imbalances? And two, the issue of the expansion. I know that yesterday, in terms of ministers of foreign affairs, that matter was not concluded. And they have decided to hand over that issue for finalization to the heads of state and government. And therefore, they must give us a sense in terms of where they are going with issue of expansion. They must also touch on the global issues, the war in Ukraine, the issues of the challenges of economy globally. As members of BRICS, what are they going to do to revive or to strengthen the economic development in their respective countries post-COVID-19 and with the impact of the war in Ukraine? The recovery, how do you recover? And as you do that, it has to be a just recovery in a sense that you cannot recover alone as China, leave the smaller GDP South Africa. How do you ensure that all these member states, they are able to all recover, but also taking in consideration that they've taken a decision to interact with other groups like the South-South or Africa as a group? How do you ensure that they also are able to be part of this economic recovery?
Yeah. The African Union has now decided to suspend Niger. And I wonder whether the question around the influence of countries like France, the influence of countries like the United States, as well as this particular case, by extension, Russia with the Wagner Group also, whether that will be an issue that is put on the table, because it also has to speak about peace, but it also has to speak about having power security, which is a major issue currently on the globe.
They may not focus on how you dislodge the West, but rather to say, how do we ensure peace and security in our countries, in our regions, and also globally. And that is why the issue of peace and security will also be part of the discussions. And these countries will have to come up with a clear statement in terms of how are they going to contribute to peace, not conflict. And you know that President Ramaphosa and other 6 heads of state have already taken an initiative to bring together Ukraine and Russia. Then you have the 12-point plan by China. China also trying to ensure that you have peace between Ukraine and Russia. Now they must try and have synergy or merge the 2 initiatives, but also taking into consideration other initiatives, particularly the ones that Ukraine is comfortable with, and therefore to ensure that that war in Ukraine, it does come to an end. And on the continent also, how do you ensure that you play a positive role in stabilizing Sudan, in stabilizing Niger, in stabilizing DRC, and also in the Cabo Delgado? We know that some of them are already assisting Mozambique to repel the insurgents. And therefore you are correct, they will have to come up with ways and means of contributing to the global peace.
The 12-point plan from China, the 10-point plan, I think it is, from the African heads of states as well as government. Crucial point there is around the grain deal. And President Putin yesterday is saying that Russia is still committed to going back to that deal, but only if their prerequisites have been met. There's going to be the G20 summit that's going to take place next month in India. Is there an opportunity whatsoever to start the conversation even now to try and convince Russia on why they should go back to the grain deal, but also some of the fundamentals that they've put on the deal that hinges on the deal being successful, being met maybe at a G20 summit?
You know, the fact that President Putin spoke about the Black Sea grain deal, it speaks to him saying, let's discuss these issues. I am not saying I will not renew this agreement. My problem is that we have reached an agreement and there are issues of concern to Russia and they have reneged on those agreements. For example, there's money that must be accessed by Russia. Because of the sanctions, they can't access that money. And there was an agreement that there will be movement in that direction. The other concern that he raised was the issue of, yes, there has been grain that has been exported by Ukraine, but 70% of that grain, much as the agreement is prioritizing poorer and developing countries, it went to the developed north and Europe in particular. Therefore, why? And only 3% went to the people that the agreement was supposed to serve. And how do we ensure that in terms of targets and time frames, we really stick to the agreement? But I think you are correct, then there will be an opportunity tomorrow because the UN Secretary General is arriving today. And you know that that agreement, it was the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, and it was Turkey. And therefore, you can be able to engage Guterres to say, Guterres, do you agree that some of the agreements were not implemented in relation to Russia? So you'll have information from both sides. And therefore, a country like China and South Africa can engage President Putin to say, we spoke to this SG. This is what the SG is saying. This is what you are saying. How do we move forward? But it is crucial that the agreement, the aim and the objective was to ensure that poorer countries in particular do have access to food security. Now, if the poorer countries can't access that grain, only a small portion is going to poorer countries. Why do you have such an agreement? And this is where the multilateralism and negotiations come into play. You have to stick to what you have agreed on.
Speaking about multilateralism, the expansion of BRICS once again, the issue around the criteria that would be used to determine which country becomes a member is probably going to be a crucial one. But on Iran and Saudi Arabia, because both have expressed interest in joining BRICS, how do you see that conversation going?
These are two oil-rich countries, and fortunately there has been attempts in the Gulf region to try and smoothen the relations within Middle East and the oil countries that are producing oil. And I think at the moment, there's this behind the scenes and bilateral interaction to strengthen and to revive the relations. Therefore, to have Iran here and Saudi representatives and also United Arab Emirates, I don't see a problem, because already there are discussions between those countries to smoothen the relations, including the role played by China and Russia to bring these countries together in the region, in the Gulf region.
Yep. Do you see a possibility at all, just in conclusion, outside of the BRICS conversation, but still sticking to Saudi Arabia, the possibility of Saudi Arabia actually recognizing Israel, considering with their stance on Palestine?
Well, it is a difficult one. You know, the Middle East countries, what binds them, and therefore it is a difficult one. But the fact that at some point in time, Saudi Arabia and America had this strong bilateral relationship, you don't know what's likely going to happen. But for now, when you look at Saudi Arabia, you can see that they are looking at alternatives in terms of strengthening of the relations. You would recall President Biden had to even go to Saudi, ask Saudi in relation to availability of oil to agree on producing more oil and making more oil available to counter Russia. But Saudi didn't agree, and they stuck to their own decisions in terms of the amount that will be available. And therefore, it speaks to, yes, some people had influence over Saudi, but it looks like Saudi is beginning to assert its independence and also the authority in terms of what they can use.
Sophie Mokoena, the SABC News International News Editor. As you can see there, those are live visuals from the open plenary session. But later on, we will hear from the heads of state from these various member states of BRICS, who will be addressing the world on some of the agreements, perhaps, that they have met, and also considering the retreat. A lot of people will be looking forward to what came out of that retreat.
Yes, people, you see, the content of retreat is very crucial, because this was a private meeting, and therefore they were able to really, express themselves frankly. And I think hot topics, even the tension between China and India, I think they did discuss such things. The issues that Putin is concerned about, I mean, they were frank. It did help, because there you have a private conversation. You don't have to think about the sound bites and the headlines tomorrow.
Well, yeah, so any moment from now, we will be hearing from them. As you can see, that getting the last confirmation around how the program will be running. And then a bit later on, there's also going to be the press briefing from the heads of state. Xi Jinping there, the president of China. His arrival was a major one here.
Well, it was a major one. I was shocked at the airport, a number of Chinese around him and who were at the airport. And he was. But one thing, I think his body language was of a person who was relaxed and who's no stranger to South Africa. He has been here many times, and therefore he was Xi Jinping. And we were discussing around how he conducts himself, even the entrance. I mean, he's just a simple Xi Jinping.
Just a simple Xi Jinping. We also saw there Lula da Silva, who is the president of Brazil. And I just quickly want to touch on this particular one, because yes, you have BRICS that's there. At certain points, the various countries would have agreed to form part of BRICS. But when it comes to Brazil, at some point there was a possibility that Bolsonaro was going to pull Brazil out of BRICS.